while now, I've wanted to do a series revealing lesser known or otherwise independent films on a series called Feature of the Month. Previously, I did a series called Short of the Week, where I reviewed independent short films on a website called shortoftheweek.com. However, that series on my channel had a rather, let's just say, lackluster following, generating some of the lowest viewed content on my channel. So I decided to slash the series in favor of doing something that would hopefully rake in more of an audience. This is the first video for Features of the Month, and I decided to review two films instead of one because, honestly, why not? It's sort of a double feature almost, which I'll explain later. An A picture and a B picture, as they used to call it. There will be light spoilers for both of these films, so if you don't want them spoiled, then I will do my best not to reveal too much about them, but no real guarantees. The first film we're reviewing is the third Studio Ghibli film, Grave of the Fireflies, and right off the bat, this is something I would easily recommend, probably because of its emotional weight and ability to connect with viewers. Grave of the Fireflies takes place near the end of World War II in Japan. Also, because it's in Japan, that's why it's an anime, obviously. Grave of the Fireflies, for one, can almost be seen as an anti-war film, although I'm sure there will be people in the comments debating that if you've seen it, as the events of the constant aerial bombardment and air raids during the movie repeatedly disrupt the lives of the characters we're following. The opening bombardment ends up killing the two main characters, Seita's and Setsuko's mother, and they are forced to live with their aunt, who initially takes them in, but then begins treating the kids rather poorly after a while. She originally comes off as a loving aunt, but then turns into a selfish and quite demeaning figure. She also appears to be using Seita for the rations he gets since his father is in the Japanese Navy, as she is seen nibbling on some leftover extra rice. Yet she complains about the scarcity of their resources. She later also uses Seita to sell their mother's clothes, which are pretty ratty and in terrible condition, for more rice. It's because of this that Seita develops his own pride complex, if you want to call it that, and decides to take his sister out and move. It can be assumed that their aunt must have felt, I don't know, almost too hard on them by that point, but then she kind of just lets them go anyway. Once they find a shelter, Seita claims he's not in need of any parents anymore and that they can do whatever they want and eat whenever they want. It's a rather romanticized idea, especially coming from a 12-year-old, because of course, parents! Who needs them? Both kids like the independence of being on their own, but they're both children after all, only capable of doing so much for themselves. Seita's actions do come back to backfire on him as they scramble more for food than they ever did before, and his sister begins suffering from malnutrition among other illnesses. A nearby farmer even tells them to suck up their pride, apologize to their aunt, and live with her again. However, this does not happen. Setsuko's health becomes so poor that it results in her, well, I won't spoil because this is where the most heart-wrenching aspect of the film comes in. And if you thought there were some Pixar films that were kind of sad, then this might honestly give them a run for their money because, well, holy crap. Grave of the Fireflies does a good job at objectively exploring the human problem of being put in a vulnerable place and making the choices that define our actions in survival circumstances. It takes place during World War II, but these circumstances could also be set during the Great Depression as well, where people were just as vulnerable for food or good housing. If you haven't seen Grave of the Fireflies before, I would highly recommend it. And do bring tissues, because you will most likely need them. The last film we're reviewing is a Pierce Brosnan film released about a year or two ago called The Last Rifleman. Not quite as good as Grave of the Fireflies, but a film I would sort of recommend if you want a quaint, heartfelt film loosely based on a true story. Contrast to Grave of the Fireflies, which took place during World War II on the Axis side of things, Last Rifleman explores the aftermath from the point of view of a former Allied soldier. Just a detail I thought I'd point out. The movie was released by Angel Studios, who you might remember with Cabrini from last year and Sound of Freedom the year before that. They technically didn't make this film, more or less a conglomeration of independent studios, but it was exhibited by them, so that technicality I guess I should point out. The film follows Artie Crawford, a Northern Irish World War II veteran who, on the 75th anniversary of the Normandy D-Day events, decides to escape from his nursing home care facility to embark on a journey to France to face some ghosts of his past and pay respects to a friend long gone. Artie comes across various ensemble characters who help him along his journey, while some journalists and authorities back home are hunting his whereabouts. But right when he gets to Normandy, France, he learns that he is the last one of his original regiment to even make it. Before, every time an event such as this occurred, Artie and his war buddies were always in attendance. But now they all died off, except for him, hence why he is the last one to make it to such an event. This is also why the film is called The Last Rifleman. I think this film has its heart in the right place, but it does just sort of come off as just okay. Pierce Brosnan does the best with what he has, and I do give props to the makeup department for making him look considerably older than what he actually does right now. Although, given another 20 years, he'll probably actually look how he is in the film. The movie also has a noticeably lower budget, if that's honestly a concern with anybody. Although, considering that there's some, quote, big budget films that have hundreds of millions of dollars in their budget that look crappier than this, Snow White for a recent example, I think the low budget look and feel was probably okay. I suppose if you're interested in the story of Artie Crawford's escape to Normandy, then I would probably check out this film. Apparently, this film is also a victim to a scenario called the twin film release, where two versions of the film based on the same or similar idea is released around the same time. Two famous examples were the releases of Deep Impact and Armageddon, both revolving around the threat of an asteroid collision with Earth. There's also The Prestige and The Illusionist, if we want to use that example from almost 20 years ago. This film was released several weeks after The Great Escaper, a film that's also about Artie Crawford's exploits, this time played by Michael Caine, who I believe is probably retired from acting, if I remember correctly. I have not seen The Great Escaper, although apparently I'll have to watch that one now as soon as I finish uploading this video to YouTube and see how that one compares to The Last Rifleman. Overall, we have two films here. The first I would heavily recommend if you want something with a huge emotional impact, and the last one I would probably passively recommend if you're at all interested in the story. Both of these films are really not that long. I mean, without credits, both of them run about 3 hours back to back, so if you really wanted to do a double feature with these films, you probably could. Anyway, that's all I have for today, so thank you for tuning into the 20th Century Dude channel for the first Features of the Month video, and hope to catch you for more. See ya.